Hey guys, good morning. Happy Monday. Monday, the day of opportunity. Happy Martin Luther King Day in the United States, Inauguration Day in the United States as well. Um, Today, I want to talk about um, something that I learned. I want to talk about the answers always no until you ask. If you don't ask for something, you automatically have a no. Now, I got this concept from a book I read when I was in my 20s, um, from Pat Croce, who was the owner of the Philadelphia 76ers, probably in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s. Um, he wrote a book, I Feel Great and You Will Too. This concept in this book changed my life, which is the answer is always no until you ask. So funny thing is, I read this guy's book, and he talks about a lot of wonderful things, but I mean I haven't read the book in 25 years probably, but and one of the things was he attempted to buy this basketball franchise, Philadelphia 76ers, if you didn't know. I think something crazy like 167 times he asked to buy him, and he didn't have the money. He kept asking, and then he put together a group to buy the 76ers, and finally he did. So he goes over like, how, how important it is to continue to ask and to ask. And so funny story is when I was in my 20s, I started this company, was and I, raised money to start the company and in real estate. It was a real estate company. And I wanted a face for one of my commercials, and it was in Philadelphia, and this guy was super famous in Philadelphia. Anybody from Philadelphia knows Pat Croce. Um, so I'm like, I want Pat Croce to do it. So how am I going to get Pat Croce to do my commercial? And I didn't know him. I was in my 20s, and I said, you know what though? I'm going to ask him because he says the answer is always no until you ask. So I went on public records, like if you're in real estate and you're looking for any kind of deals, one of the crazy things in the United States is that um, people's name, wherever they live, if it's in their personal name, you can get their address. So I go on public records. I find out, I had an idea what county he lived in. I look and I find out where he lives. And I sent him, I had somebody in my office take a picture of me with like my arms up like this and like a shirt on that I had that said, I feel great and you will too, in his book. And I wrote him a letter and I said, hey, Pat, I read your book. It was really inspiring. And uh, I really want you to do this commercial for me. And since you teach, the answer is always no until you ask. I am going to send you a FedEx every day until you answer me. Because I didn't have his phone number, I didn't have anything. So I sent him a FedEx with a picture of me and the letter. And, in my head, I was like, I'll send it, all year. And a FedEx instead of a regular letter. So people always open a FedEx. So I send the FedEx. I think about 3 days later, after the third one, I get a phone call on my phone, and it's like, "Hey Jay, this is Pat Croce." I'm like, "No way." I'm like, honestly, I tell him, I said, Pat, I have to tell you, one, I'm surprised you called me, and two, I can't believe you called me only after three times, right? And he said, well, listen, I could tell how resilient you were, and I knew I really didn't want 150, FedEx envelopes sent to my house, and blah 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 blah. So anyway, I got him on the phone. Um, he didn't do the commercial. He had like, Allen Iverson and all these, 76ers and famous people ask him to do commercials all the time. And he just had a policy that, he couldn't do it for them. He couldn't do it. Anyway, the point is, I got this guy on the phone because I was not afraid to ask. And later on in my life, I've used this a million times. If I want something, I will be annoying about. First off, I'm not embarrassed to ask. I will ask, and B, I will ask so many times that basically you have to give it to me. My coach, the guy that coached me. He was booked, didn't have whatever. I wanted him to coach me, and I even told him. I wrote him an email, because he was not really super responsive. He said, I don't have any room right now, blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, I'm going to call, text, and email you every day until you let me hire you. And I wanted to hire him. It was insane. So after about a week, he said, "You know what, man? I definitely want to coach somebody like you." It shows your persistence. Anyway, the answer's always no until you ask. And what I will add, I want to just say a couple things about this. Those are some cool stories, but if you're afraid to ask for what you want, you will never get what you want. We all know what we want. And then a lot of people are just afraid to ask. I tell this to my kids all the time too. I'm like, listen, if you want it, don't be afraid to ask for it. And kids are a little bit better. So the answer is no until you ask. So ask. Don't be embarrassed to ask. And think right now on this daily nugget, what do I want that I'm afraid to ask for or I haven't asked for? And go ask for it and ask for it every day until you get it. Hope that helps you guys. Have the best day of your life. Thanks, guys.